Niall Noígíallach, or in English Niall of the Nine Hostages, was a prehistoric Irish king, the ancestor of the Uí Néill family that dominated Ireland from the 6th to the 10th century. The rise of the Uí Néill dynasties and their conquests in Ulster and Leinster are not reliably recorded and have been the subject of considerable study and attempts to reconstruct them. Irish annalistic and chronicle sources place his reign in the late 4th and early 5th centuries, although modern scholars, through critical study of the annals, date him about half a century later. He is presumed to have been a real person, but most of the information about him that has come down to us is legendary, historicity and dates. Niall is presumed, on the basis of the importance of his sons and grandsons, to have been a historical person, but the early Irish annals say little about him. The annals of Innisfallen date his death before 382, and the chronicle Scotorum to 411. The later Annals of the Four Masters dates his reign to 379 to 405, and the chronology of Geoffrey Keating's Erin to 368 to 395. However, the early annals record the activities of his sons between 429 and 516, an implausibly long time span for a single generation, leading scholars like Kathleen Hughes and Francis J. Byrne to conclude that the events of the later half of the 5th century have been extended backwards to accommodate as early a date as possible for the arrival of St. Patrick, with the effect of pushing Niall back up to half a century. Hughes says Niall himself must have died not before the middle of the 5th century. Byrne, following James Carney, is a little more precise, dating his death to c. 452. T.F. O'Reilly argues that Niall and his sons were responsible for the breakup of the ancient kingdom of Ulster and the creation of the kingdoms of Tir, Chonal and Tiriogan, and the satellite kingdom of the Aigila. O'Reilly and Byrne argue that the literary sources, though late and garbled, preserve genuine traditions that Niall led raids on Britain, and perhaps died on one. Niall is placed in the traditional list of High Kings of Ireland. However, the traditional role of kings and its chronology is now recognized as artificial. The High Kingship did not become a reality until the 9th century, and Niall's status has been inflated in line with the political importance of the dynasty he founded. Legendary biography. A biography of Niall can be constructed from sources such as the Role of Kings section of the 11th century Leborga Bala Éireann, the Annals of the Four Masters, compiled in the 17th century, chronicles such as Geoffrey Keating's Erin, and legendary tales like the 11th century The Adventure of the Sons of Eochaid Mugmeaden, and The Death of Niall of the Nine Hostages. These sources date from long after Niall's time and they have little to no value as history. Early life. A legendary account of Niall's birth and early life is given in the possibly 11th century tale Ectra Macni Chach Muimidoin. In it, Eochaid Mugmeaden, the High King of Ireland, has 5 sons, 4, Brian, Ailill, Fardcree and Fergus, by his first wife Mongfine, sister of the King of Munster, Crimthan Mac Fideig, and a 5th, Niall, by his second wife Garen Casjub, daughter of Sachil Balb, King of the Saxons. While Karen is pregnant with Niall, the jealous Mongfine forces her to do heavy work, hoping to make her miscarry. She gives birth as she is drawing water, but out of fear of Mongfine, she leaves the child on the ground, exposed to the birds. The baby is rescued and brought up by a poet called Tournay. When Niall grows up, he returns to Tara and rescues his mother from her labor. Although it is anachronistic for Niall's mother to have been a Saxon, O'Reilly argues that the name Karen is derived from the Latin name Carina, and that it is plausible that she might have been a Romano-Briton. Keating describes her not as a Saxon but as the daughter of the King of Britain. Mongfind appears to have been a supernatural personage. The saga The Death of Crimthan mac Fidéig says the festival of Samhain was commonly called the Festival of Mongfind, and prayers were offered to her on Samhain Eve. Accession. Seeing Niall's popularity among the nobles, Mongfind demands that Eochaid name a successor, hoping it will be one of her sons. Eochaid gives the task to a druid, Sivchen, who devises a contest between the brothers, shutting them in a burning forge, telling them to save what they can, and judging them based on which objects they choose to save. Niall, who emerges carrying an anvil, is deemed greater than Brian, with a sledgehammer, Fiacre with bellows and a pail of beer, Ailill with a chest of weapons, and Fergus with a bundle of wood. Mongfind refuses to accept the decision. Sithgen takes the brothers to the smith, who makes them weapons, and sends them out hunting. Each brother in turn goes looking for water, and finds a well guarded by hideous hag who demands a kiss in return for water. Fergus and Ailill refuse and return empty-handed. Fiacre gives her a quick peck, but not enough to satisfy her. Only Niall kisses her properly, and she is revealed as a beautiful maiden, the sovereignty of Ireland. She grants Niall not only water but her name, Alexei, and the kingship for many generations. 26 of his descendants will be High Kings of Ireland. Fiacre is granted a minor royal line. 2 of his descendants, Nath and Ailill Moult, will be High Kings. This loathly lady, motif, appears in myth and folklore throughout the world. Variations of this story are told of the earlier Irish High King Lugaid Loigda. In Arthurian legend, one of the most famous versions appears in both Geoffrey Chaucer's The Wife of Bathstale and the related Gawain romance, The Wedding of Sir Gawain and Dame Ragnall, and in John Gower's Middle English poem Confessio Amantis. In another story, the succession is not settled when Eochaid dies, and Mongfind's brother Crimthan takes the high kingship. But while he is away on a tour of his lands in Scotland, Mongfind's son seize Ireland. Crimthan returns to Ireland intending to give battle. Mongfind, purporting to make peace between her brother and her sons, holds a feast at which she serves Crimthan a poisoned drink. Crimthan refuses to drink it unless she does too. They both drink, and both die. Niall succeeds to the high kingship, and Brian becomes his second in command. Another version has Mongfind try to poison Niall, but she takes the poison herself by mistake. While Niall is high king, his brothers established themselves as local kings. Brian rules the province of Connacht, but Fiacre makes war against him. Brian defeats Fiacre and hands him over as a prisoner to Niall, but Fiacre's son Natha continues the war and eventually kills Brian. Niall releases Fiacre, who becomes king of Connacht and Niall's right-hand man. Fiacre and Ailill then make war against Crimthan's son Eochaid, king of Munster. They defeat him and win great spoil, but Fiacre is wounded in the battle and dies of his wounds shortly afterwards. The Munstermen renew the battle, capture Ailill and cut him to pieces, and war continues between Munster and Connacht for many years. The Leborgabala Erin says there was war between Niall and any Sensalage, king of Leinster, over the Barama, a cow tribute first imposed on Leinster by Tuathal Techtma. Enna's son Eochaid is named as Niall's killer in all sources, although the circumstances vary. All sources agree he died outside Ireland. The earliest version of the Leborga Bala says Eochaid killed him on the English Channel. Later versions adding that Niall was invading Brittany when this happened. Keating, quoting a Latin life of St. Patrick, says that Niall led Irish raids on Roman Britain, and in one of those raids Patrick and his sisters were abducted. Keating associates these raids with those mentioned by Gildas and Bede, and deduces that, since some Irish sources say Patrick was abducted from Brittany, that Niall's raids must have extended to continental Europe as well. In the saga, The Death of Niall of the Nine Hostages, Eochaid's enmity with Niall begins when he is refused hospitality by Niall's poet, Laidsén mac Bearchaid. He makes war and destroys the poet's stronghold, killing his son Lead. Laidsén responds by satirizing Leinster so that no corn, grass or leaves grow there for a year. Then Niall makes war against Leinster, and peace is concluded on the condition that Eochaid is handed over. Niall chains Eochaid to a standing stone, and sends 9 warriors to execute him, but Eochaid breaks his chain and kills all 9 of them with it. He then kills Laidsén by throwing a stone which lodges in his forehead. Niall exiles him to Scotland. The story then becomes confused. Niall makes war in Europe as far as the Alps, and the Romans send an ambassador to parley with him. Abruptly, the tale then has Niall appearing before an assembly of Pictish bards in Scotland, where he is killed by an arrow shot by Eochaid from the other side of the valley. Keating has Eochaid shoot Niall from the opposite bank of the River Loire during his European campaign. His men carry his body home, fighting 7 battles on the way, and his foster father Tornay dies of grief. His body is said to have been buried at Ochan, now known as Thornhill at Jordanstown, a few miles west of Navan in County Meath. He is succeeded by his nephew Nathlai. Burn suggests that Niall's death took place during a raid on Roman Britain. Irish tradition had forgotten that the Romans once ruled Britain, and relocated his remembered confrontations with the empire to continental Europe, with Alba, the ancient name for Britain, being confused with Elpa, the Alps, or being understood with its later meaning of Scotland. A poem by the 11th century poet Synnwyr a Hartacane in the Book of Leinster credits Niall with 7 raids on Britain, on the last of which he was killed by Eochaid above the surf of the Iction Sea. A poem attributed to the same poet in later.He credits him with going to the Alps 7 times. Family and descendants. Keating credits Niall with 2 wives, Ina, daughter of Lugaid, who bore him 1 son, Fianchu, and Rhiniach, who bore him 7 sons, Loega, Inde, Main, Eogan, Conal Gulban, Conal Cremth-Iron, and Quapra. These sons are the eponymous ancestors of the various Uí Néill dynasties. Eogan of the Cene Neogain and Conal Gulban of the Cene Conaill, making up the northern Uí Néill. Fianchu of the Cene Firechurch dynasty. Loega of the Cene Loega, Main of the Uí Main. Eogan of the Cene Neogain, Conal Cremth-Iron of the clan Charmain and the Silnarado Slain, and Quapra of the Cene Quaprai, making up the southern Uí Néill. Famous descendants include Niall's great-great-grandson St. Columba, St. Maelruba, the kings of Iliach, the kings of Tir Eogain, and the kings of Tir Conaill. Early in 2006, geneticists at Trinity College, Dublin suggested that Niall may have been the most fecund male in Irish history. Of their Irish sample, the geneticists found that 21% of men from northwestern Ireland, 8% from all of Ireland, a substantial percentage of men from western and central Scotland, and about 2% of men from New York bore the same Y chromosome haplotype. The geneticists estimated that about 2 to 3 million men bear this marker, and concluded that these men are patrilineal descendants of Niall. According to the PBS documentary series Finding Your Roots, Niall of the Nine Hostages' modern-day American descendants include Bill O'Reilly, Bill Maher, and the show's host, Henry Louis Gates, Jr. Origin of his epithet. There are various versions of how Niall gained his epithet Noígíallach. The saga, The Death of Niall of the Nine Hostages, says that he received 5 hostages from the 5 provinces of Ireland, and 1 each from Scotland, the Saxons, the Britons and the Franks. Keating says that he received 5 from the 5 provinces of Ireland, and 4 from Scotland. O'Reilly suggests that the 9 hostages were from the kingdom of the Aigeala, a satellite state founded by the Uí Néill's conquests in Ulster, noting that the early Irish legal text the Born RG chart says that the only duty of the Aigeala to the King of Ireland was to give him 9 hostages. Family tree. Bold indicates a High King of Ireland.